I would like to introduce you to fettuccine. This is a very inexpensive snake, but how much does it cost to actually take care of a snake throughout an entire year? So as mentioned, this is fettuccine. I've never shown him on the channel before. This is my wife's snake that she had long before she met me, and what a beautiful animal this is. A normal ball python that really doesn't cost very much. I mean, realistically, I get these things almost for free all the time. I've bought and sold ball pythons like this for 5, 10, 20 bucks. But when you buy an animal, you don't just think about the purchase price of your pet snake. You have to think about things like how much does the cage cost? And even more than that, what's the upkeep? How much is it gonna cost me month after month, year after year? And that's what today's video is about. And I think you're gonna be a little bit shocked. It's gonna be less expensive than you think. And if we're comparing to something like a dog, I promise you, way freaking cheaper. I spent $200 and something on dog food today for my 4 dogs that's gonna last a month and a half. Let's see if we can get away with less than that for an entire year for a snake. All prices I'm going to talk about are in US dollars, just because that's where most of the audience is, so you can convert from there. And of course, not to ramble on, but every snake's going to be different, obviously. We're going to use as an example a normal sized ball python or a corn snake or something in that range, a spotted python, rosy boa, something like that, and we'll talk about smaller snakes and bigger snakes. Now, in terms of the setup, this is something that's a one-time purchase, and we're going to talk about the upkeep of the setup first, but I know I'm gonna get the question, so I'll start here. If you wanna know what I use, there's a link down below for all the stuff that I like to use in my enclosures, and the enclosures themselves. And this is highly variable. We're gonna talk in the next video about setting up an enclosure that I got brand new, how much that enclosure costs, and the whole thing. But if you want to get something that's inexpensive, you can easily find a used enclosure for about 100 bucks. I've got all sorts of enclosures, including some in the back there that when I'm done with them, I sell them for about $100 Canadian, so US, that's a little bit cheaper. So I wrote it out, we'll show you some pretty snakes, and I'll put the numbers on the screen. You can buy a used enclosure for about $100, and then the substrate that goes on the bottom of it, I always use something that's rather cheap, organic play sand, mixed with sphagnum moss, cocoa core, and coconut chip. Let's call it about 15 bucks for the entire thing. And this is, by the way, supposing you're filling a 4x2x2 enclosure. We'll talk about other size enclosures in a little bit. You're gonna need a water bowl. That's gonna be about 5 bucks. Your heating and your lighting is gonna be about $75. Decor, let's call it 25 bucks. All in, $225. Now keep in mind, if you buy everything brand new, it's gonna be more expensive. If you buy everything used or with your snake, sometimes they'll throw in the enclosure and the decor and all that for free. I personally have bins and bins and bins of enclosure stuff that was just free when I bought snakes or had someone give me a snake, something like that. And keep in mind, when you buy your snake, you can buy it off of, Craigslist or buy it at an expo or take in a rescue. You don't have to buy it at full price, and definitely don't buy a freaking ball python at PetSmart. It's gonna cost you 100 bucks when the animals are worth like 5 to 20 bucks. I think it's becoming clear that this stuff doesn't cost as much as you think, and there's many ways that you can pay for it, but what I normally do is whip out my Ridge wallet, which conveniently has all the cash in the back. And right now, just in time for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you can save up to 47% on some of your favorite Ridge items on the website. I just switched to this voodoo green with a cash strap on the back to hold the green Canadian money. Of course, if you prefer the money clip, you can get that instead. And what I love is you can have up to 12 cards in here and it stays really slim. This is way thinner than my old school dad wallet, and I'm so glad I finally switched. Plus, you can get the matching key case, and even the pens come in the same color. So I've got voodoo green everything. The key case holds between 1 and 6 keys, and it's absolutely silent. So with over 50 colors to choose from, there's really going to be one that suits your personality and what you like to look at. Plus, with up to 47% off right now, whether you're treating your friends, your family, or just yourself, this is the right time to switch. All of them are RFID blocking, which means that it's super safe too. Right now, go to my link, ridge.com/WWR, and save up to 40% on your new Ridge wallet. So anyway, 225 bucks, whatever it costs, you have your enclosure now all set up. How much is it going to cost you throughout the year? Well, there's things that you're going to need to replace. For example, no matter your setup, you're going to need to replace your lighting if you're using lighting. So I'm going to use this example as you're using a heat bulb and you're using a UVB or some sort of linear bulb. Now, in general, you're going to have to replace UVB twice a year. Now, it depends on the manufacturer. Again, there's a link below for the UVB that I use. Sometimes you'll do once, but let's call it twice. Let's say that you use, say, an Arcadia Shade Dweller as your primary light source. In this case, they're about 25 bucks, and link below, it's going to cost you $50 a year to change those. And let's say that you have to change the basking bulb 3 times. Generally, a basking bulb lasts me about 6 to 8 months before it burns out. So let's call it 3 because Zoom Ed has them in packs of 3. And again, link below. So that's 35 bucks. And then let's suppose that you don't have a bioactive setup. I prefer bioactive. Quickly, in a nutshell, you've got microfauna, so isopods and springtails that help clean up the substrate. You, of course, scoop the big poops, but they take care of everything else. If you do have that, you don't have to worry about changing the substrate. Leave the substrate, change it every 3-4 years in little clumps. Not all at the same time, because you don't want to get rid of the beneficial bugs. If you don't do that and you just go regular substrate, then you're going to spend probably 30 bucks a year changing it out. Of course, there's ways to get around it. So if you use a radiant heat panel, then you're not gonna have to change that instead of using a basking bulb or going under tank heating. There's ways to make it cheaper, but on the high end here, we're talking about, what's that number, 115 bucks? My math is good. Also, I have it written down. But either way, 115 bucks just to take care of the enclosure every single year. Next, let's talk about food. Now, this is gonna be way cheaper no matter what snake you have compared to a dog, okay? I've got this geriatric Pomeranian who I love to death, but his bags of dog food cost over $100 and I have to buy like 4 of them a year, okay? $400 for a 12-pound dog. He's worth it. Look how cute he is. But I mean, like, it's gonna be way cheaper. Let's suppose that you're feeding 1 rat that costs you $2.50 every single week. So 52 rats every single year for your ball python or whatever you're gonna, I don't know, Sonoran, leopard boa, whatever it is. That's 130 bucks. Now, in my estimation, if you watch, my care guide for ball pythons here, this snake right here, I feed about every 10 days. As some snakes get older, they need to be fed less. Male ball pythons are a perfect example. So fettuccine here costs me about $91 if we round, so it's every 10 days or so. $91.25 to be exact. Let's suppose you have something bigger. You got, a regular size Burmese python or a big boa constrictor, something like that, that eats a 7-pound rabbit every 6 weeks, which is about what Kratos eats. Kratos, my Burmese python, eats a big rabbit between 5 and 7 pounds. It costs me about $7 per rabbit, which on average is 8.66 feeds. So let's call it 9 feeds at $7 a piece. So we're talking about $63. It's crazy how the bigger snake costs less money. So either way, this is going to change, right? If you have a hognose snake, believe it or not, it's actually going to be more expensive, or a rhino rat snake, because colubrids like to eat smaller meals and they like to eat them more frequently. So if you have a mouse that costs, say, $1.75 and you have to feed it, 104 times a year because it's twice, it just gets different, but it's going to be very similar in price. So let's go on the high side and call it 130 bucks a year. The next big one is vet bills or care like that. And this is going to shock you. My number is 0. You don't have to take your snake to the vet for an annual checkup. I know some veterinarians will say that, but realistically, let's not be silly gooses. I love veterinarians. They do great work, but they need you to make money, okay? So of course they're gonna recommend that you come when you don't need to. Everything is like that. Every mechanic wants you to come back and do it. It's always like that. Not saying that you shouldn't go back for things you actually need to go back for. And dogs do need annual checkups. It's just different with snakes, okay? And in my experience, of all the snakes I've had, which we're talking hundreds, I might have had 1,000 animals up to this point, including the ones that I produced. And I've gone to the vet twice, maybe 3 times. I actually have a video coming up pretty soon about how you don't have to go to a vet, but we'll talk about that in a different episode. It's telemedicine. It's really cool. Anyway, next year. Anyway, so for the thousands of animals I've had, it's literally averages out to $0. So I would say that have money aside just in case, put 500 bucks aside in a slush fund, but I would say that you don't have to worry about it. It's not an expense every single year that you have to worry about like it is a dog or a cat. So this means on average, 245 bucks every single year, which works out to $20.42 a month. $20.42 every single month. How much is Netflix now? I think it's more than that. Your gym membership costs more than keeping a snake. So for the first year, if supposing you spend $225 on the initial setup, $470 for the first year, including the setup, and then of course whatever the cost of the animal is. Now keep in mind, when you have a larger snake, although the food is cheaper, everything else is going to be more expensive. There's more lights, there's more substrate, the enclosure costs more. So let's go 1.5 times that cost because of the extra stuff you need. We're at $367.50, so $30-ish every single month. $30.63 basically. And then if you have a smaller snake, the food's gonna cost a little bit more, but you're gonna need less substrate and lighting and stuff like that. So let's call that the exact same as the medium-sized snake. Anyway, this is a long video to say it's gonna cost you about 20 bucks a month. Like between 20 and 30 bucks a month to keep a snake, which is crazy because everything costs way more than that. There's no groomer fees. You don't need to take them to the vet for checkups. You don't need to take them to the dog park. You don't need frills, and keep it simple, okay? You don't need the latest and greatest, the bunny ears for Easter. Like, you can buy all that stuff too. I see people going overboard, which is fine. You can, but this in my opinion isn't the bare basics, bare minimum. This is a really good level of care. This is the care level that you want to give. Should we do one for frogs and lizards and turtles? Let me know in the comment section below. The turtle one's gonna be wild. It's so much more expensive. As always, thank you so much for subscribing and hitting the like button. Really helps out. And as always, Patreon. You guys get discounts on merch, videos early. Of course, there's extra videos coming out with like this one here. Then you get to see those days or sometimes weeks early. And one-on-ones, like one-on-one conversations, super fun. All that for as little as $1 a month. That's it, because I do videos usually twice a week. That means I'll see you in the next one.